Captain Jake Morrison stared at the tactical display with growing dread. Red dots filled the screen, each one representing a Kythera warship that had torn through human defenses like they were made of paper. The alien fleet moved with cold purpose toward the mining colony of New Haven, where 3 million civilians waited for an evacuation that would never come in time. Distance to the colony? Morrison asked quietly. 12 minutes at current speed, replied Lieutenant Amy Brooks from her position at the tactical station. Her fingers danced across the controls, but Morrison could see the tension in her shoulders. They both knew what was about to happen. The bridge of the USS Defiant hummed with nervous energy. It was an old destroyer, built 20 years ago when humanity thought their biggest threat was pirates and smugglers. The gray metal walls showed scratches and wear from countless missions, but the ship had always brought her crew home. Today might be different. Captain, incoming transmission from Admiral Stone, announced Ensign Lisa Park from communications. Her young face looked pale under the blue glow of her screens. Morrison nodded. Put him through. Admiral Frank Stone's weathered face appeared on the main viewer. Behind him, Morrison could see the chaos of Earth Command's war room. Officers rushed between stations while damage reports scrolled across dozens of monitors. Jake, I need you to fall back immediately, Stone said without greeting. The Proxima defense fleet is gone, all of it. 47 ships destroyed in less than an hour. Morrison felt his stomach drop. The Proxima fleet had been humanity's strongest force outside the Sol system. How many survivors? Fewer than 200 from a crew of 30,000. Stone's voice carried the weight of those losses. The Kythera ships are completely immune to our weapons. Energy beams pass right through them. Missiles don't even explode when they hit. It's like the aliens exist in a different dimension. What about kinetic rounds? Railguns? Nothing works, Jake. We're fighting ghosts that can kill us, but we can't touch them. On the tactical display, the Kythera fleet reached New Haven. Morrison watched helplessly as bright flashes erupted across the colony's surface. Each flash meant thousands of lives snuffed out in an instant. The aliens fired some kind of plasma weapon that burned through shields and armor like they weren't there. Sir, we should get closer, said Petty Officer Carlos Rivera from the engineering station. The stocky man's hands gripped his console tightly. Maybe we can help with the evacuation. Morrison shook his head. With what? Our weapons can't hurt them, and if we get too close, we'll just add our names to the casualty list. But he couldn't just sit there and watch. Morrison had joined the fleet to protect people, not to hide in the darkness while innocents died. Amy, take us to the edge of the asteroid field, keep us hidden, but give us a good view of their attack patterns. Aye, sir. The Defiant moved carefully through the rocks and ice that surrounded New Haven's system. Morrison had fought pirates in these same asteroids 5 years ago. Back then, the biggest worry was a lucky shot from an old laser cannon. Now he faced an enemy that seemed to break the basic laws of physics. There, Brooke said suddenly, pointing at her scanner. Look at Ship 7 in their formation. Morrison leaned over her shoulder to study the readings. The Kythera vessel appeared as a ghostly outline on their sensors, its crystalline hull shimmering with an energy field that bent light around it. As they watched, the alien ship fired its plasma cannon at a fleeing transport. For just a moment, the shimmering stopped, and the ship became solid on their screens. Did you see that? Morrison asked. Yes, sir. When it fired, the phase field collapsed for maybe half a second. Rivera pulled up the sensor logs on his station. Here, let me replay it. The recording showed the alien ship flickering from transparent to solid and back again. It happens every time they shoot. Morrison felt his heart rate increase. After 6 months of watching humanity get slaughtered by invisible enemies, they might have found something. How long does the field stay down? 0.4 seconds, sir, but only while they're actually firing. That's not much time. No, sir. Our targeting computers need at least 2 seconds to lock onto a moving target at combat range. Morrison watched the tactical display as more transports tried to escape the doomed colony. The Kythera ships picked them off one by one, each kill revealing that brief moment of vulnerability, but the window was too small for conventional weapons to exploit. Captain, Park said from communications. I'm picking up a distress signal from the surface. It's from Governor Walsh. Put it through. A man's desperate voice filled the bridge. This is Governor Walsh to any human ships in the system. We have 2 million people trapped in the underground shelters. The Kythera are burning through the blast doors. We need immediate evacuation. Please, if anyone can hear this. The transmission cut off in a burst of static. Morrison closed his eyes for a moment. 2 million people. Men, women, children who had done nothing wrong except live in the path of an alien war machine. His ship carried enough firepower to level a city, but against these enemies, it might as well be throwing rocks. Sir, Brooks said quietly, we should record everything we can about their attack patterns. Maybe the scientists back home can figure something out. Morrison nodded. It wasn't much, but it was something. Lisa, start a full sensor recording. I want every detail about how those ships move and fight. For the next hour, they watched the systematic destruction of New Haven. The Kythera were thorough and emotionless in their killing. They burned every building, destroyed every ship, and left nothing behind but cooling rock and metal. When they finished, the alien fleet regrouped and moved on toward the next system. Morrison called up the star charts. The Kythera were heading straight for the Terra system. They would reach Earth in 2 weeks at their current speed. Amy, did you get good readings on their vulnerable moments? Yes, sir. Every ship shows the same pattern. They become solid for exactly 0.4 seconds when they fire their main weapons. The timing is consistent across their entire fleet. Send everything to Admiral Stone immediately. Include our analysis and recommendations. Morrison stared at the dead world of New Haven on his screen. Somewhere in those ruins lay the bodies of 3 million people who had trusted humanity to protect them. The Kythera had proven that human technology was worthless against their phase-shifting abilities. But maybe, just maybe, they had also revealed a weakness. Carlos, how are our engines? Running smooth, Captain. We can make Earth in 10 days if we push hard. Then let's go home. The Admiral needs to see this data, and maybe our scientists can figure out how to turn those 0.4 of a second into something we can use. As the Defiant turned away from the dead system, Morrison felt a cold determination settle in his chest. Humanity had always been good at finding creative solutions to impossible problems. The Kythera might think they were untouchable, but they had just shown that every defense had a flaw. Now humanity just had to figure out how to exploit it before Earth shared New Haven's fate. The USS Defiant docked at Luna Station 3 days later. Morrison had pushed the old ship's engines hard to reach Earth's moon, knowing that every hour counted. The Kythera fleet was still moving toward Earth, destroying everything in their path, like a slow-moving storm of death. Morrison walked through the station's corridors with heavy steps. Luna Station buzzed with activity as engineers and scientists worked around the clock. Everyone knew that humanity's survival depended on finding a solution soon. The smell of welding metal and burning electronics filled the air as teams raced to build new weapons that might work against the aliens. Admiral Stone met Morrison in Conference Room 7. The older man looked like he had not slept in days. Dark circles rimmed his eyes and his uniform was wrinkled from long hours at his desk. Jake, your sensor data has caused quite a stir, Stone said as they sat down. Our best scientists have been studying it for 2 days straight. Any good news? Maybe. Dr. Helen Carter thinks she has an answer, but it's dangerous as hell. The door opened and a woman in her 40s entered. Dr. Carter had short brown hair and tired eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. She carried a thick folder filled with technical papers and computer printouts. Captain Morrison, your discovery might save us all, she said without introduction. The Kythera ships exist in a shifted dimensional state. That's why our weapons can't touch them. But when they fire, they have to return to normal space for a brief moment. Morrison nodded. We figured that much out. The problem is the timing. 0.4 of a second isn't enough for our targeting systems. That's where my project comes in. Carter opened her folder and pulled out several blueprints. For the past year, we've been studying fragments of Kythera technology recovered from their early attacks. We've learned how to build our own phase shift drive. Stone leaned forward. What does that mean exactly? It means we can match their dimensional frequency, make our ships exist in the same shifted state they use. If we time it right, we can be solid at the same moment they are, allowing us to hit them. Morrison studied the blueprints. They showed a complex machine filled with spinning disks and energy coils. How big is this thing? That's the first problem. The drive is massive. Installing one requires removing most of a ship's secondary systems, shields, backup weapons, life support redundancy. Almost everything has to go to make room for the phase equipment. And the second problem? Carter's expression grew darker. The human brain wasn't designed to handle dimensional shifts. Extended use causes severe neural damage, headaches, seizures, memory loss, and eventually death. Morrison felt his stomach tighten. How long can a crew operate the system safely? Our best estimate is 6 hours before permanent damage begins. After 12 hours, survival becomes unlikely. The room fell silent. Morrison understood what they were asking him to do. Take his ship and crew on a suicide mission with experimental technology that might not even work. There's more, Stone added. We only have enough resources to build one prototype. If it fails, we won't get a second chance. Morrison looked at the blueprints again. The phase drive would turn the Defiant into a ghost ship, able to exist between dimensions like the Cathera, but it would also probably kill everyone aboard. When can you install it? The equipment is already being prepared, Carter said. If we work non-stop, we can have your ship ready in 4 days. That cuts it close. The Cathera will reach the outer system in 8 days. It's the best we can do. Morrison made his decision. Do it, but I want to brief my crew first. They deserve to know what they're volunteering for. 2 hours later, Morrison gathered his senior officers in the Defiant's briefing room. Brooks, Rivera, and Park sat around the small table, listening as Morrison explained the situation. When he finished, the room was quiet except for the soft hum of the ship's life support systems. So this phase drive will let us fight the aliens, but it might kill us in the process? Rivera asked. That's the short version, yes. Park raised her hand slightly. Sir, what happens if we refuse? I mean, does humanity have any other options? Morrison shook his head. Earth's fleet has 800 ships. The Cathera are bringing 200 vessels that our weapons can't touch. Without this technology, Earth falls. Brooks leaned back in her chair. My sister lives in Denver with her 2 kids. If we don't try this, they die anyway. I know this is a lot to ask, Morrison said. Anyone who wants to transfer off the ship can do so. No questions asked, no mark on your record. The 4 officers looked at each other. Rivera spoke first. I joined the fleet to protect Earth, Captain. Count me in. Me too, Park added. My parents are on Earth. I can't abandon them. Brooks nodded. Someone has to test this thing. Might as well be us. Morrison felt a surge of pride in his crew. All right then. Dr. Carter's team will start the installation tomorrow. We have 4 days to learn how to use technology that barely exists. The next morning, Morrison watched as engineering teams swarmed over his ship. They cut into the Defiant's hull with plasma torches, removing entire sections to make room for the phase drive. The ship's familiar corridors became a maze of cables and temporary supports as workers installed the alien-inspired machinery. Dr. Carter personally supervised the installation of the main phase coils in what used to be the ship's secondary armory. The coils were beautiful in a strange way, made of a metal that seemed to shift color in the light. Energy flowed through them in patterns that hurt to look at directly. The phase field will extend in a sphere around your ship, Carter explained as they watched the work. When active, you'll exist in the same dimensional state as the Cathera. You'll be able to see them and hit them, but you'll also be vulnerable to their weapons. How do we control it? The system links directly to your ship's main computer. Your tactical officer will be able to shift in and out of phase as needed. But remember, every second you spend phased brings you closer to neural damage. Morrison nodded grimly. What about maneuvering? Can we still move normally while phased? Yes, but it feels different. The test pilots describe it as flying through thick liquid. Everything responds more slowly. On the second day, Brooks began learning the new tactical systems. The phase controls were unlike anything in standard fleet training. Instead of simple weapon targeting, she had to coordinate dimensional shifts with firing solutions. The timing had to be perfect, or their shots would pass harmlessly through the enemy ships. It's like trying to hit a moving target while riding a roller coaster in the dark, Brooks complained after a particularly frustrating simulation. Rivera faced his own challenges with the power systems. The phase drive drew enormous amounts of energy from the ship's reactors. He had to learn how to balance power between the drive, engines, and weapons without overloading anything. One wrong move and we either lose phase capability or blow up our own reactor, he told Morrison during a break. There's no middle ground with this system. Park struggled with communications. The phase field interfered with normal radio transmissions, making it difficult to coordinate with other ships or receive orders from command. She worked on developing new protocols for combat communication while dimensional shifting. On the third day, they conducted their first live test. Morrison ordered all non-essential crew off the ship before activating the phase drive. The sensation was immediate and disturbing. The ship seemed to become lighter, as if it were floating instead of sitting in the docking bay. Colors appeared muted, and sounds became distant and hollow. Phase field stable, Brooks reported, her voice echoing. Strangely, all systems showing green. Morrison looked out the bridge viewports. Luna Station appeared ghostly and translucent, as if he were seeing it through thick fog. Other ships in the docking bay flickered in and out of visibility like mirages. How long can we maintain this safely? Morrison asked. Carter's voice came through the intercom from the observation deck. For this first test, no more than 10 minutes. We need to monitor the neural effects carefully. They ran through basic maneuvers while phased, learning how the ship responded to commands. Everything felt sluggish and dreamlike, but the Defiant remained controllable. After 8 minutes, Morrison ordered the phase field deactivated. The return to normal space hit them like a physical blow. Morrison's head pounded and he could see similar pain on his crew's faces. Park looked pale and gripped her console tightly. Side effects are normal, Carter assured them. Your brains are adjusting to the dimensional transition. It gets easier, with practice. By the fourth day, the Defiant was as ready as they could make her. The ship looked different now, with new equipment protruding from her hull and strange energy patterns flickering along her sides. She was no longer just a destroyer. She had become something new and unprecedented. Morrison stood on the bridge as final systems checks were completed. In 4 days, the Kythera would arrive at Earth. His ship and crew were humanity's only hope of finding a way to fight back against the Untouchable Invaders. The experimental phase drive hummed quietly in the ship's belly, waiting to either save the human race or kill everyone aboard trying. The USS Defiant waited in the shadow of Titan, Saturn's largest moon. Morrison stood on the bridge watching the tactical display as 30 Kythera warships approached the outer edge of the solar system. The alien fleet moved in perfect formation, their crystalline hulls shimmering with the same phase fields that had made them untouchable for 6 months. Contact in 20 minutes, Captain, Brooks reported from her station. Her hands moved across the new phase controls, checking systems. One final time, the targeting computer had been completely rebuilt to work with their dimensional shifting technology. Morrison felt sweat on his palms despite the cool air on the bridge. This was it. Everything humanity had learned about fighting the Kythera would be tested in the next hour. If they failed, Earth's main defense fleet would face the same fate as every other human force that had tried to stop the aliens. Rivera, how are our power levels? Reactors at maximum output, sir. Phase drive is ready for activation. The engineer's voice was steady, but Morrison could see tension in his shoulders. They all knew what was at stake. Lisa. Any word from Admiral Stone? Park looked up from her communications console. He wishes us good luck, sir. The main fleet is holding position near Jupiter, ready to engage if we... She didn't finish the sentence, but everyone understood. If the Defiant was destroyed, Earth's conventional forces would try to buy time for civilian evacuations. Morrison activated the ship-wide communication system. All hands, this is the captain. In 15 minutes, we'll engage the enemy using technology no human crew has ever used in combat. We don't know what will happen, but we do know that everyone we care about is counting on us. Do your jobs, watch out for your shipmates, and remember that we're making history today. He switched off the intercom and turned to his crew. Amy, are the targeting solutions ready? Yes, sir. I've programmed attack patterns based on our observations at New Haven. If their firing cycles remain consistent, we should be able to hit them during their vulnerable moments. Good. Remember, we only get one chance at this. If they adapt to our tactics, we won't survive long enough to try again. The Cathera fleet drew closer. On the main viewer, Morrison could see their ships as ghostly outlines against the stars. Each vessel was roughly the size of a human cruiser, but their crystal-like construction made them appear almost organic. Strange lights pulsed along their hulls in patterns that seemed to follow no human logic. They're slowing down, Brooks announced. Looks like they've detected us. Morrison wasn't surprised. The Defiance phase drive probably created energy signatures the aliens could recognize. How long until they're in weapons range? 3 minutes, sir. All right, people, this is what we trained for. Morrison gripped the arms of his command chair. Amy, activate the phase drive on my mark. The Cathera ships began to spread out, forming an attack formation that would let them hit the Defiant from multiple angles. Morrison counted 30 vessels, each one capable of destroying his ship with a single shot. The odds were impossible, but that had never stopped humans before. 2 minutes to weapons range, Brooks called out. Morrison felt his heart pounding. Rivera, divert all power to weapons and phase drive. Drop life support to minimum levels. Aye, sir. All non-essential systems shutting down. The bridge lights dimmed as power flowed to the experimental equipment. Morrison could hear the phase drive building energy somewhere deep in the ship's hull. The sound was unlike anything he had heard before, like metal singing in harmony with itself. 1 minute to contact. Morrison leaned forward. Amy, activate phase drive. Now. The universe changed. One moment Morrison was sitting on a normal ship bridge, and the next he felt like he was floating in a dream. Everything around him became translucent and ghostly. The stars outside flickered between bright and dim, as if someone was turning a light switch on and off. His own hands looked strange, almost see-through. Phase field active, Brooks reported, her voice sounding distant and hollow. I can see them clearly now. On the tactical display, the Cathera ships appeared solid and real for the first time. Their crystal hulls pulsed with alien energy, and Morrison could see weapon ports opening along their sides. The enemy was preparing to fire. Here they come, Morrison said. Remember the timing. Wait for them to shoot, then hit them during their vulnerable window. The first Cathera volley lit up space with brilliant plasma beams. The energy weapons passed harmlessly through the Defiant's phased hull, but Morrison could feel the heat as they missed by mere meters. His ship existed in the same dimensional state as the aliens now, but timing was everything. Target the lead ship, Morrison ordered. Fire when it becomes solid. Brooks watched her displays intently. The Cathera vessel charged its main weapon, energy building along its forward hull. For a brief moment, the alien ship's phase field collapsed as it fired. Got you, Brooks whispered, pressing the firing key. The Defiant's plasma cannon fired. At the exact moment the enemy ship became solid. The beam struck the crystalline hull and burned through in a shower of sparks. The Cathera vessel shuddered and began to drift, dark fluid leaking from the hole in its side. Direct hit, Rivera shouted. We killed one of them. Morrison felt a surge of hope, but 30 seconds later his head began to pound. The neural effects of phase shifting were starting. Stay focused, we've got 29 more to go. The battle became a deadly dance. Morrison piloted the Defiant through the enemy formation, while Brooks waited for the perfect moments to fire. Each time a Cathera ship attacked, it became vulnerable for less than half a second. Brooks had to predict exactly when and where the aliens would shoot, then hit them during that tiny window. The second kill came 2 minutes later when Brooks caught a Cathera cruiser as it fired on what it thought was an empty piece of space. The third kill happened when Park managed to predict an enemy attack pattern by listening to their dimensional resonance frequencies. I can hear them talking to each other, Park said, her voice strained. The sound comes through the phase field. I think I can guess when they're about to fire. Morrison's vision began to blur as the neural effects worsened. How long had they been phased? 5 minutes? 10? Time seemed to move differently in this strange dimensional state. Amy, how many are left? 17 enemy ships, sir. But we're taking damage too. Morrison looked at his status board. Several of the Defiant systems showed red warning lights. The Kythera had managed to hit them twice during their own vulnerable moments. Shield power was down to 30%. Rivera, can you give me more power to weapons? Trying, sir, but the phase drive is pulling everything we've got. If I push the reactors any harder, we might explode. The battle continued for another 10 minutes. Morrison's crew worked through increasing pain as their brains struggled to handle the dimensional shifting. Brooks hit 4 more enemy ships, but her targeting became less accurate as her vision blurred. Rivera's hands shook as he tried to balance power systems that seemed to fight against him. Park suddenly straightened at her station. Captain, I'm getting something strange on the dimensional frequencies. The remaining Kythera ships are charging all their weapons at once. Morrison felt ice in his stomach. All of them? That's not how they fight. They're adapting, Brooksy realized. If they all fire at the same time, we can't target individual ships during their vulnerable moments. On the tactical display, the 13 surviving Kythera vessels moved into a tight formation. Energy readings spiked as they prepared for a coordinated attack that would probably destroy the Defiant. Morrison made a desperate decision. Amy, plot a course straight through their formation. We're going to ram them. Sir? They expect us to stay at range and pick them off one by one. Let's get close and see how they handle a knife fight. Morrison pushed the Defiant's engines to maximum power, diving toward the center of the enemy formation. The alien ships fired their coordinated volley, but the human ship was already inside their formation, where their weapons couldn't track effectively. At close range, Brooks didn't need to wait for vulnerable moments. She fired continuously at the crystal hulls around them, her shots burning through alien armor at point-blank range. 3 Kythera ships exploded in quick succession as the Defiant raced between them like a shark among fish. The surviving aliens tried to retreat, but they were designed for long-range combat. In close quarters, their superior phase technology couldn't save them from human aggression and unpredictability. When the last enemy ship fell, Morrison finally ordered the phase drive deactivated. The return to normal space hit the crew like a physical blow. Morrison's vision went dark for several seconds and he could hear someone retching in the background. Status report, he managed to say. All enemy vessels destroyed, Brooks reported weakly. We did it, sir. We actually did it. Morrison looked at the tactical display showing debris where 30 alien ships had been just an hour ago. Humanity had finally found a way to hurt the Untouchable Invaders. But the victory came with a terrible cost. Long-range sensors showed the main Kythera armada of over 150 ships heading straight for Earth. The USS Defiant limped back to Earth orbit with her crew barely alive. Morrison sat in the medical bay while doctors examined his eyes with bright lights. The phase exposure had left him with severe headaches and double vision that came and went, without warning. Across the room, Brooks lay on a medical bed with her eyes bandaged. The doctor said she might never see clearly again. Captain Morrison? Dr. Carter entered the medical bay carrying a tablet computer. I need to debrief you on the battle while your memories are still clear. The phase exposure can cause memory loss if we wait too long. Morrison nodded carefully. Any sudden movement made his head pound like someone was hitting it with a hammer. What do you need to know? Everything. How the ship handled, how the weapons performed, what worked and what didn't. Carter sat down beside his bed. We have less than 2 days before the main Kythera fleet arrives. Earth's entire defense depends on what we learned from your fight. Morrison told her about the battle, describing how the phase drive had worked and how his crew had adapted their tactics during combat. Carter took notes on everything, asking detailed questions about timing, power consumption, and the physical effects on the crew. The neural damage is worse than we expected, Carter admitted when Morrison finished. You and your crew pushed the phase drive far beyond safe limits. Another hour in dimensional space would have killed you all. But it worked. We proved the aliens can be beaten. Yes, but we can't ask every crew to die just to kill a few enemy ships. We need a better solution. 2 hours later, Admiral Stone called an emergency meeting in Earth Defense Command. Morrison attended despite his condition, sitting carefully in a chair that didn't spin or move. The conference room was packed with fleet commanders, scientists, and government officials who had come to hear about humanity's first victory against the Cathera. Ladies and gentlemen, Stone began, Captain Morrison has proven that the enemy can be defeated. However, the cost is extremely high. His crew suffered severe neural damage that may never heal completely. Dr. Carter stood up to address the room. The phase drive technology works, but it's not practical for fleet-wide deployment. We don't have time to build enough phase drives for all our ships, and we can't ask hundreds of crews to sacrifice their lives or health. Morrison listened as the debate continued around him. Some officials suggested building more ships with phase drives. Others wanted to evacuate Earth's population to distant colonies. A few recommended surrendering to the aliens and hoping they would show mercy. Finally, Morrison struggled to his feet. The room grew quiet as everyone turned to look at the man who had actually fought the untouchable enemy. I have an idea, Morrison said slowly. What if we don't need multiple phase drives? What if we can make one drive work for an entire fleet? Carter frowned. That's impossible. The phase field only extends a few hundred meters from the drive itself. Not if we link the ships together somehow. Use quantum entanglement or subspace fields to share the phase effect across multiple vessels. Dr. Carter's eyes widened. Network the entire fleet through the Defiance phase drive. Use your ship as a master controller while other vessels share the dimensional effect. Stone leaned forward. Would that work? It might, Carter said thoughtfully, but it would put enormous strain on the master ship's crew. If the Defiant is destroyed or her crew becomes incapacitated, the entire fleet gets trapped in phase space forever. Morrison felt his damaged vision blur as he considered the implications. They were asking him to risk not just his own crew, but every ship in Earth's defense fleet. If he made a mistake, humanity would lose everything in one battle. How many ships can we network together? Morrison asked. Theoretically, all of them. Every vessel in the solar system could share the phase field if we route it through your drive system. Admiral Stone stood up. Captain Morrison, I can't order you to do this. The risk is too great, and your crew has already sacrificed enough. Morrison thought about his crew lying in the medical bay. Brooks might never see clearly again. Rivera's hands shook constantly from nerve damage. Park suffered from memory problems that left her confused and disoriented. They had already paid a terrible price for humanity's survival. But he also thought about Earth, hanging in space just a few million kilometers away. 3 billion people lived on that blue world, including his own sister and her children. The Cathera fleet would reach Earth in 36 hours. This might be humanity's only chance. We'll do it, Morrison said quietly. But I want volunteer crews only. No one gets forced into this mission. The next day, Morrison was amazed to find that every ship captain in the fleet had volunteered. 200 vessels from Earth, Mars, and the asteroid colonies had answered the call. Destroyers, cruisers, cargo ships, and even civilian transports had joined the defense fleet. Their crews knew they might all die, but they chose to fight. Anyway, Dr. Carter worked frantically to install quantum link transmitters on every ship. The devices would connect each vessel to the Defiance phase drive, allowing the entire fleet to shift dimensions together. The technology was untested and dangerous, but it was all they had. Morrison returned to his ship despite the doctor's protests. His crew insisted on joining him even though they were all badly injured. Brooks could barely see. Rivera's hands trembled constantly, and Park forgot things minutes after learning them. But they were the only humans who had experience fighting in dimensional space. Are you sure about this? Morrison asked each of them privately. You've already done more than anyone could ask. My kids live on Earth, Brooks replied, squinting at him through her damaged eyes. I'm not abandoning them now. Rivera held up his shaking hands. These still work well enough to run the power systems. The Cathara aren't getting past us. Park smiled sadly. I may not remember much anymore, but I remember why we're fighting, that's enough. The final battle began at dawn on Morrison's homeworld. The Cathara armada emerged from hyperspace like a swarm of deadly crystals, their 150 ships spreading across the outer solar system. They moved with the same cold efficiency that had destroyed every human fleet for the past 6 months. Earth's defense force waited near Jupiter's orbit, 200 ships linked together by quantum transmitters. Morrison sat on the Defiance bridge, his vision swimming from the neural damage. Around him, his injured crew prepared for what might be their last fight. All ships report ready for quantum link activation, Park announced, reading slowly from her notes to compensate for her memory problems. Phase drive online, Rivera added, his trembling hands dancing across the power controls. All reactors at maximum output. Brooks squinted at her tactical displays. Enemy fleet and weapons range in 10 minutes. I'm as ready as I can be, sir. Morrison opened a channel to the entire fleet. All ships, this is Captain Morrison. In a few minutes, we're going to try something that has never been attempted before. We're going to fight as one ship, one crew, one family. Watch out for each other, do your jobs, and remember that everyone we love is counting on us. The Kythera fleet approached in perfect formation. Morrison could see their ships shimmering with phase fields, confident in their untouchable status. They had no idea that humanity had learned to fight back. Activate quantum links, Morrison ordered. All ships, prepare for dimensional shift. The effect was immediate and overwhelming. Instead of just his own ship, Morrison felt connected to 200 vessels at once. The mental strain was enormous, like trying to control multiple bodies simultaneously. His already damaged brain screamed in protest. Phase drive activated, he managed to say through gritted teeth. All ships are now in dimensional space. The universe became a ghostly, translucent place filled with the outlines of human and alien ships. Morrison could feel every vessel in his fleet through the quantum link. Their crews were scared but determined, ready to follow him into the impossible battle ahead. The Cathara opened fire first, sending waves of plasma toward the human fleet. But this time the energy beam struck solid targets instead of passing through harmlessly. The human ships had shields and armor, and they knew how to use them. Morrison coordinated the fleet's response through pure willpower. His consciousness stretched across 200 ships at once. Brooks targeted enemy vessels during their vulnerable moments, while Rivera balanced power across the entire quantum network. Park listened to alien communications and predicted their attack patterns. The battle lasted 6 hours. Ship after ship fell on both sides as human determination clashed with alien technology. Morrison felt every loss through the quantum link, each destroyed vessel tearing at his already damaged mind. But humanity adapted and learned, using tactics the rigid Cathara couldn't counter. In the end, it came down to sacrifice. The Cathara tried to escape when they realized they were losing, attempting to shift their entire fleet to a higher dimensional state. Morrison made the hardest decision of his life. He locked the quantum network permanently active, trapping both fleets in dimensional space. The human ships could return to normal space using manual overrides, but the automated Cathara vessels became prisoners of their own technology. Unable to adapt or improvise, they drifted helplessly in dimensional space while human crews slowly worked their way back to reality. Morrison collapsed on his bridge as the last enemy ship was disabled. His mind felt broken from the strain of controlling so many vessels simultaneously. Around him, his crew lay unconscious or barely responsive from the neural damage. But they had won. Earth was safe, and humanity had learned to fight the untouchable invaders. Years later, Morrison visited the Phase Warfare Academy where young officers learned the techniques his crew had pioneered. He walked slowly with a cane, his vision permanently damaged from that final battle. Brooks taught tactical classes while wearing thick glasses that helped her see. Rivera worked as an engineering instructor despite his trembling hands. Park had retired after her memory problems made military service impossible. They were heroes who had saved the human race, but they had paid a price that would last the rest of their lives. Morrison watched the cadets practice dimensional shifting and felt proud that their sacrifice had meaning. Humanity was no longer helpless against phase-shifting enemies, and Earth remained free among the stars.